Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our second session of day 3 of Athena 2022. Very, very excited to be joined by a load of different women in tech at NHS Digital. Just a quick kind of piece of housekeeping before I pass over to Laura. I think if you've got any questions throughout, let us know in the chat, and as ever, I'll be monitoring that. You can follow their hub on Showcode, and you can also ask on Discord if you're watching this retrospectively. So without further ado, I will pass over to Laura and let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much and welcome, and thank you to you all for attending our talk today. We are all here from the NHS Digital Academy, which is the early careers function at NHS Digital, and we wanted to speak to you today about the role of digital in health and social care, and specifically why the NHS needs coders as well as clinicians. The NHS is Europe's biggest employer, but not everyone employed by the NHS holds clinical qualifications or is on the very front line of care. Particularly in this day and age, there is a huge need for digital infrastructure to support the function of the health service, and this is where NHS Digital comes in. We have been all working at NHS Digital for over 6 months and have already worked on some amazing and critical projects that we want to tell you about. We will start with an overview of the NHS Digital, and then we'll tell you a bit about the academy that we are part of before we each introduce ourselves and talk about the projects that we've been working on. There will also be a chance to ask questions at the end, so make note of anything that you want to ask at the end of the presentation. I will now hand over to Dami.
Hiya. So what is NHS Digital's role as part of the NHS? NHS Digital is the national digital data and technology delivery partner for the NHS and social care system. The work of NHS Digital is all done with a goal of improving people's lives through data and technology. We believe that digital can help our NHS improve, provide better care, and enable us to make the best use of scarce health resources. Over to Maisie.
Oh, Maisie, you're muted.
Cool. Online talks, love it. As you can imagine, there's a huge variety of work that falls into NHS Digital's remit. Our responsibilities can be broken down into 5 broad technical areas. You can see these on the screen. Each of these has a key role in the wider healthcare system of the NHS. So you have directly in patient-facing aspects, then also operating features at a clinical level, advancing medical research, and in keeping the day-to-day operation of the digital side of NHS running smoothly. On the slide, you can see the 5 directorates in NHS Digital. So first, there's IT operations. This focuses on the reliability, performance, and secure operation of NHS services. So works to enable optimization, monitoring, control, auto heal of all live systems and services that are operated for the healthcare system. Then you've got data services. So this works with the NHS's crucial health and care data. The Data Services Directorate collects, links, and disseminates data, conducts studies internally, and also collates data sets that are able to be shared for research, as long as obviously the research has the permission to use health data. Then you've got platforms and infrastructure. So the Platforms and Infrastructure Directorate maintains the reliability, performance, and security of the core infrastructure, platforms, and live services on which the NHS and the social care system relies. Product development. So in this space, they're very much responding and making new products from the needs of the healthcare landscape. So they develop products such as the NHS app, the COVID Pass, finding your NHS number, flow booking vaccines and tests, as well as getting results. So obviously they've been innovating a lot around COVID, and I think all of these directorates have been so busy in like the past few years with all that kind of work. But yeah, generally are just innovating to meet internal and external users of the NHS and the needs that they might have, and improve existing products. And then finally, there's cybersecurity, which is obviously very important as healthcare data is very valuable and sensitive. So the Cybersecurity Directorate monitors, hunts, and responds to cyber threats, and provides wider advice to the NHS, making sure that they have a robust and current view of changes and advancements in cybersecurity. Each of us has worked in one or more of these directorates, so we'll go on and talk a bit more about each in a bit more detail. But first, I'll pass over to Zara, who's going to explain a bit about the Academy and the Early Careers Department.
Okay, so the Academy is the early careers team within NHS Digital. We're made up of degree apprentices, summer interns, and graduates like ourselves who are placed across the business working on different projects. The 7 of us speaking today are part of the 2021 graduate cohort. So we started in mid-September last year. And as part of the 2-year scheme, we have 4 lots of 6-month rotations. So we've just recently started our 2nd rotation. Our cohort has a balanced mix of people with mathematics and computer science backgrounds, and we all started the scheme with different levels of technical skills. It helped that we attended an 8-week coding bootcamp run by North Coders at the start of the scheme, where we learned and practiced pair programming, backend development with JavaScript, SQL, built services using AWS, and we also did a bit of C#. Nice that we could do the course in person. It let us sort of bond with each other before we were placed on different projects across the directorates, which Maisie has mentioned. And we'll now get into talking to you about each of them. So on to Abby.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Abby. I've been working within the IT Operations Centre and the National Monitoring Service. We kind of love acronyms at the NHS, so these stand for ITOC and NMS, and they both fall under the Directorate of IT Operations. So we work 24/7, 365 to support the large range of live services that we operate for the health and care system. A bit about me, I'm originally from Northumberland and I studied computer science at Heriot-Watt in Edinburgh. After finishing my degree, I didn't know what area I wanted to specialise in since computer science is such a broad subject. So that's why the NHS Digital Grad Scheme was so inviting to me, as it gave me the opportunity to try different areas every 6 months. I was also super interested in psychology at school, and that kind of followed into an interest into human-computer interaction. So NHS Digital gives that mix of understanding what people need whilst using my computer skills and helping people at the same time. So my experience working within the IT Operations Centre, ITOC, and the National Monitoring Service, NMS. So ITOC itself launched in September 2020 to support the National Coronavirus Testing System. And this has expanded to support the vaccination of other live services. Whilst the frontline NHS staff were giving the vaccinations, we were providing critical information and workflow to keep these services and their data available. So we monitor and deliver data into Splunk Splunk Cloud, which is a platform that helps us with data visualization, analysis, and searching through data, things like that. We also develop KPIs, which stands for Key Performance Indicators, and also dashboards to assist with that kind of visualization of the data for the programs and projects within NHS Digital. I got the opportunity to work with developers, testers, business analysts, technical architects, and project managers, and I got to carry out work in almost every one of these roles, from developing dashboards in Splunk, developing Python code, running tests, and being given the opportunity to come up with ideas for process improvements and carry them out myself. One of the pieces of work I carried out was to improve the KPI monitoring. So I was able to work with stakeholders and do some investigation work, and then hand over the final service to other teams. And managing this piece of work myself was quite hard to begin with, but it helped me gain a lot of confidence as I spoke to a variety of people and presented during workshops, and it helped me understand how Splunk Cloud worked as I used it more and more. So my team also followed agile methodologies. So this is using things like Jira for daily tasks and Confluence for documenting processes or sharing knowledge. So I learned how to be self-organized and responsible for my own work pretty quickly. I gained a lot of skills from the placement, from agile working and communication to just general 9-to-5 job skills, but the technical skills I developed were in Splunk, Git, and Python. It was a really good placement for learning Splunk as it's really in depth, and I had a lot of help from devs and Splunk experts. And most of the tasks I did in NMS involved pushing code to GitLab, so I was able to advance my skills from university. I was also given the opportunity to develop Python code, as I mentioned before, but this was kind of a one-off project that the team gave me as myself and the other graduate on the team wanted to improve our Python skills. And that's kind of the beauty of the grad scheme. They focus a lot on our personal learning and development and are happy to support projects that help the NHS and our teams. So before starting this placement, I didn't realize how many jobs and roles there are within the NHS, and you can come from any background or experience and find a role within the organisation. So I will now pass over to Mia, and she will tell you about her time in data services.
Hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Mia, and I'm one of the grads who's currently been placed within the Data Services Directorate. So data services is one of the largest areas of NHS Digital, and NHS Digital is essentially a data custodian, a data guardian for the NHS. So we have a lot of data about sort of different health concerns. So for example, you know, we have information on hospital episode statistics, how many people are accessing different treatments and things like that. So data services is basically the area with which that information is looked after. So a little bit about me. So I'm Mia. I actually started off doing a degree in economics and politics, which I finished, but then sort of realized that actually I wasn't sort of that interested in going into economics. I did a placement in a commodity trading firm and realized that it wasn't really the path that I was interested in. And instead, I chose to have a career in tech because I think it's an area where you're constantly learning and being challenged, and it can just lead to such an array of pathways. So it was something that really, really appealed to me. And obviously working for NHS Digital, it's an area where you can have a real impact on people's lives. So it's an amazing place to work, and I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, because all the work we do is just helping to save the NHS time and money and thereby improve patient service. So at the moment, I'm working within the data science skilled team, which is a very cool area to be working in. And I'm working on the MPS enhancement project, which is the master patient service. And the master patient service is a very cool data linkage algorithm that is basically used sort of in the backbone of the NHS to try and link patients up to their demographic records held in Spine. And this is used across various NHS data sets. So it helps researchers sort of track episodes or sort of say readmissions to hospital, things like that, because it produces this person ID. So it's really, really critical. And it's been a very, very interesting area to work in, and it's exposed me to sort of a whole new area of data science that I had no idea about. And so yeah, it's been very interesting to have, and it's exciting to have sort of this much responsibility to be able to be involved in a project that has such kind of critical, it's so critical for the functioning of the NHS, despite only being a graduate on the graduate scheme. In addition to this, the data science team has sort of allowed me to have lots of different learning opportunities. So for example, I've been working on a data science accelerator scheme, and this essentially is something that's run by the government data science campus. So another quite nice thing about working in the public sector is that there's lots of other public sector groups that are doing lots of different data science work that we can all sort of learn from and feedback from. So this data science accelerator scheme is something which people from loads of different pathways, you know, the Department of Health, Department of Education, loads of other different departments, lots of people are sort of all filtering in and learning in this area. And so I have one day protected a week where I doing analysis on the improving access to psychological therapies data set. And that work, I'm basically sort of looking at socioeconomic factors that are stored alongside patients to try and understand how they might affect the quality of patient treatment and outcomes. And from there, I'm trying to build a multiple logistic regression model, which can identify key variables that might be predictor variables for patient outcomes. So it's very, very cool sort of exploratory analysis. And in addition, the data science team also have seminars on a Friday afternoon, which is one of the highlights of my week, where different members of the team will present new technologies or research projects they've been working on, which is always very eye-opening and interesting to listen to. So yeah, it's a very cool. And also there's the Data Science Festival that's just happened as well, which again was another instance of this kind of cross-governmental kind of intersection of different data scientists presenting research from various different areas. And so it's a really cool team to be part of, because you really feel like you're at the intersection of lots of new cutting edge research that's going to have a real impact on people's lives. So yeah, very highly recommend the Data Science Guild team. So I will pass on to Laura now.
Hello everyone. I've already introduced myself, but I'm Laura. A little bit of background about me is that I went to Southampton University, where I studied MORS, which stands for Maths, Operational Research, Statistics and Economics. During my degree, I picked up some skills in coding, mainly in R, because I took a lot of stats heavy modules and they tend to prefer using R. But I would still argue I wasn't confident in my coding ability after I left uni. Also during my time at uni, I was able to complete a project which involved like the formatting of data, then taking that data, doing all the analysis on it, and then presenting the findings from that. And I think it was this project that like really honed in for me that I wanted to do a more analysis-based role. And that is why I applied for NHS Digital. So since starting NHS Digital, I've been in the data production team within DARS, which is the Data Access Request Service. And their role is to speak to clinicians, researchers who want to get data from us to complete projects which could help improve NHS services. We then take their requests and filter the masses of data that we hold to help fulfill their brief. So I'm going to talk you through like a hypothetical example. So say NHS Digital was approached by a researcher asking for some data for a project they are computing. In order to request this data, they would need to submit an application to the DARS online system, which will contain all the information as to why they are doing their research, the benefits it will have for the health and social care in the UK, the types of data that they need, such as HES data, which Mia mentioned earlier on, the hospital episode statistics data, which includes like A&E data, critical care, etc. And then any filters that need to be added, such as years, it might be more niche, like an operation code, just anything they need for the research they're carrying out. Obviously, they will also need to obtain a strict data governance standards, since they need appropriate legal basis to be able to obtain the data that we hold. So once the request is accepted, it will get sent to the team that I was working in, and we will start coding their request, mainly using the language SQL. This is then run to create a table that we can then zip and send out to the customer. Once this is all completed, it will move from in production into checking, where we will follow a checking process which includes cross-referencing row counts, the fields, and then any more specific aspects to do with that process. And then once we're happy that everything is okay, it will then move on for sign-off and then for release. Now, given I had never really used SQL coming into the team, I've been able to pick up all the skills I need within my team. And as cliche as it sounds, personally now I love using SQL because it's one of the languages that like you write it as if you would say it. So like kind of makes sense in my head. And the codes that we were able to create and the codes that we execute can finish people's requests within a matter of minutes. Whereas if I was to sit there and trawl through all the data, deleting each individual entry that we don't need, it could take hours. It's prone to human error. And I just hope that that highlights like how important it is to have coders, because the more quickly that we can get this data out to researchers, the earlier they can start doing their projects, which can potentially help lead to life-changing research. So yeah, I will now hand over to Dami in platforms and infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. So yeah, I'm Dami, and I'm was working in platforms and infrastructure on data quality dashboards. So yeah, a bit about me. So I grew up in Ireland, and I studied mathematical sciences in University College Dublin. So my degree covered 3 subjects: mathematics, applied mathematics, and statistics. If you can tell, I'm quite an indecisive person. So instead of just studying one subject, I thought, why not study 3? And so during my degree, I discovered my passion for analyzing and understanding data. And I was fortunate as well to get some exposure to coding in R and Python. So yeah, I graduated, the pandemic happened, and looking through graduate schemes, and there were so many that I went through. But the one thing, the many things actually that attracted me to the NHS Digital Graduate Scheme was one that it was a blended scheme. And so I would get the opportunity to try working in different teams and on different projects over a 2-year period. Also the ability to like gain experience in data and cyber and product development was extremely attractive, and also placed NHS Digital as the top choice for me personally. So yeah, coming from a mathematical background, hadn't really built up that much coding experience. So the 8th week North Coders training bootcamp was such a godsend. And yeah, it really helped me to ingrain some good coding practices and methodologies, and also afforded us as graduates to get to know each other really well before we were integrated into our first teams within the company. So back to my first placement. So yeah, I was working in platforms on data quality dashboards, and I was working using the Patient Demographic Service, which is PDS. So that is a national electronic database of NHS patient demographic details. So it has around 74 million records, and it helps healthcare professionals to identify patients and match them to their health records. It also helps them to contact and communicate with patients, which is invaluable. And so the goal of one of the dashboards that I worked on was looking at each of the fields within the patient demographic service, such as age, gender, ethnicity, etc., and to provide the senior leadership team in platforms with a dashboard that showed how well populated fields were, whether certain fields had a high invalidity rate, so they had a lot of invalid mobile phones, per example. And then that would also help the leadership team to steer projects that could then help to improve data quality within the patient demographic service. So that was really interesting. One of the biggest data sets I've ever worked with in my life, and I probably will ever work with, to be honest. And yeah, got to work within a multidisciplinary team, and we had a data analyst who like tended to work in SQL, and then we also like worked in PySpark, SQL, and Python, so was able to really build up my coding experience. Worked with some business analysts and testers, so just worked with so many people and was really able to glean a lot from a lot of their experience and understanding. Also learned so much about the importance of data cleaning and data quality and having good coding practices, which I've been able to bring into my second placement, and I know that I'll be able to bring into any team that I join. Also within NHS Digital, there's so many training opportunities, and you're able to get access to a lot of training resources that can help you to like study for different types of professional exams, such as like some of the AWS cloud training ones. And also I had the opportunity of reporting to senior leadership team and platforms, which is quite an amazing thing to say for your first placement. And also learned so much about the importance of data protection and safeguarding. So it was really a lovely placement on the whole, looking back, and being able to work with different visualization tools such as Power BI and Tableau, just made it really rounded, placement experience. And yeah, that's it from me. I'll hand over to Maisie now. Thanks.
Cool. I'll try to be not on mute this time. Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Maisie. I've also been working in the platforms directorate. I was kind of doing something a bit different to Dami, which I think kind of like shows how much like in each directorate there's so many different things going on. So I was working as a software developer on Spine. So a bit of like my background, I did maths at Edinburgh Uni. So this gave me some kind of exposure and like got me interested in coding. Like I'd used Python, MATLAB, R, but again, like also always in a mathematical context. So tech roles were kind of like, I knew that I was interested in them because I'd always liked the coding side of my degree, but also a bit of a mysterious prospect. So the grad scheme is perfect in that you can rotate through all the directorates and through loads of different types of roles. So really benefit from the ability to like find out a bit about what's happening across the whole company and like see what you like and what you don't like, which is really cool. So my first placement really threw me in the deep end of software development. So I found the bootcamp really helpful in transferring my like kind of maths coding knowledge to a more like technical and computer science kind of setting. So I was working on Spine, which is called that. I think Mia like mentioned Spine a bit, but it's called Spine because it's technically the backbone of the NHS. It's a secure way to transfer messages and data across the healthcare system. So like a brief example would be if someone goes into A&E and has to be treated by a paramedic, then they would use Spine to find out like key information about that person, such as like allergies and stuff like that, without having to like find their whole medical history and like look through their whole medical history. So they could treat you quickly and in the best way they could. The Spine itself is a giant code base with lots of different languages and uses. So it's a great opportunity to work with languages that I already had used before, and also to read and learn new languages. There were opportunities to work in both front end and back end, as well as lots of testing and fixing bugs. As Spine is a part of the national critical infrastructure, then it's not allowed to have any downtime, or obviously people's lives would be at stake. So really, all of the work had to follow strict release processes and lots of testing when you're adding any changes or new features to the code. So yeah, this was a great experience to kind of get involved in all that kind of stuff, and like I hadn't, from a maths background, hadn't really followed any of those kind of coding practices before, so it was really great to get to put that into practice. I'll go into a bit more detail about like one area that I was working in, which was NEMS, which is the National Events Management Service. So I was doing Selenium testing on a UI that created access reports for NEMS. I think it's a great example of how Spine navigates the gap between clinicians and then also the data held by the NHS. So NEMS works to keep clinicians and organisations up to date with changes that are relevant to them. So clinicians and organisations could, with the right permissions, could subscribe to notifications of events for either a specific patient or a specific type of event for an area in general. So examples of event types would be, there's births, so there's quite a lot around newborns as well, such as like hearing and blood spot tests. And then more generally, if people change address or change GP or any deaths, they could all be examples of events. So if we take the example of someone changing address, then this change would be added to the PDS database, which I think Dami did a good job of explaining. It's the Personal Demographics Service, and is a database of patients' demographic information, so stuff like your address. This change in the PDS database would then produce a notification in NEMS that would then be visible to clinicians or organisations that had subscribed to the change of address notification, like a notification of those events, for either the person, if it was that person who changed address, or generally in the area they wanted to know about changes of address, they'd get a notification. And then this is kind of great because it allows them to almost get all of this information about updates in kind of close to real time, rather than kind of like finding out later down the line, which is really great. And then kind of on the other side of things, I was working on the UI, which was keeping a log of anyone who'd accessed these events. So essentially, when you're working with the public's data and stuff like that, it's all really important that you work up to the data protection regulations. So if anyone accessed someone's data, there's got to be a record of that, and you've got to make sure that, yeah, there's like another side of regulations that have to be followed. But overall, I think it paints a really good picture of how the Spine kind of bridges that gap of like, yeah, clinicians and then like kind of like the digital side that links all the data together, and creates this kind of like ability to have like a real-time interaction. But yeah, it was a really interesting kind of area to work in, and I think, yeah, great start to the grad scheme. I'll now pass over to Zara, who's been working in the product development directorate.
Thanks, Maisie. Okay, so hi, I'm Zara. My first rotation was in product development, which, as Maisie said in the intro, this directorate has been vital over the pandemic, from creating things such as the NHS app with the COVID pass that you might have used yourself, find your NHS number, booking, ordering and receiving results for COVID tests. All of these have been critical services over the course of the past 2 years. Now, a bit about myself and my background. I did a degree in chemistry and maths at the University of Leeds, which is not directly technical, but I did touch on R in statistics modules and Python in a module called Big Data, Big Science, which was actually within chemistry. This then sparked an interest in data science. So I went to complete a master's in data science at Lancaster Uni, and here I used R again and Python, but in a lot more depth than I had in my undergrad. During my master's, I did modules in machine learning, forecasting, and business analytics. And this sort of extra coding experience confirmed that I wanted to work within the tech space. And for my master's dissertation, I actually did a summer placement with the Lancashire and South Cumbria NHS Foundation Trust. And the culture there sort of made me realize that I want to work in the public sector and I would love to work in the NHS. So moving on to when I joined the scheme, similar to what the other grads have said, for those with a maths background, the North Coders Technical Bootcamp was really beneficial because I didn't have any experience in sort of back-end development, pair programming or testing methods. And that exposure increased my confidence going into my first placement. So within product development, I was in a team called Pathways. So I might as well start by explaining what Pathways is. Imagine you call 111 or 999 and the call handler is asking the caller questions to triage them. Now, when I say triage, it essentially means the process by which you assess a patient to determine the care that they need. So these questions that the call handler asks, they are part of a large complex flowchart, and they lead to different pathways, maybe hundreds or thousands. And depending on the caller's response to a question, it will trigger the next question until we finally get to the appropriate care, whether that be calling an ambulance or seeing your GP. We will determine that through the questions. Now, some of the patient-facing products you might have seen that have been developed by Pathways are 111 Online and also the Urgent Care Self-Service tool. So this is a tablet that you might see when you go into A&E. I know it's not available in all A&Es, but it's got a very similar interface to 111 Online. And again, it will ask you questions and then direct you to appropriate care. And this is really important for relieving pressure in the emergency department. As you know, the queues are very long. So these have really made a big change in our healthcare system. Now, Pathways was made up, the team was made up of lots of multidisciplinary teams. So these actually included authors and clinicians, people who are doctors. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I always imagine doctors working in hospitals, not in a tech company. But it just shows how important it is to have that relationship between the clinicians and the analysts and coders to really improve our healthcare. So the team that I was in within the Pathways team was a reporting team, and our work was very data focused, quite similar to the work that Laura's team did. So we used SQL to answer queries from the clinicians within the Pathways team, gave them the data and values that they needed to then improve the pathways, refine the questions. But alongside this day-to-day work, I also had a side sort of project, which was in R. And I'm going to try and show you some of it now. I'll see if the page will load on top of the PowerPoint. Otherwise, I'll just have to escape the PowerPoint. So the project that I did in R, I was actually surprised that you could do this in R because I had only used it for sort of statistical questions, but it was essentially creating a dashboard with figures on the number of 999 and 111 calls. I'm just going to skip forward a bit because it takes a while to load. But yeah, so the dashboard went back around 13 months. You could switch between 111 figures and 999 overall. And then we had the total calls in the last 12 months, some flip boxes, these little things that you wouldn't be able to do in an average Excel dashboard, which is what it was initially on. Also had little widgets, so the interface was a lot more accessible and user-friendly than having an Excel report, which you have to email out every month. So having that automated system and extra features such as that drill down was really, really useful. It also had lots of different graphs, which you can move lines, zoom in and out, and all these little features that you just wouldn't have in Excel to make the user interface easier. And I'm still shocked that you can do this in R, because I just always thought it was a fancy computer, really. But if you're interested in any of these figures, they are published on the website. You can see monthly ones. There's a folder of all the different months, so do go check it out if you're interested. But yeah, that was the work I did within the team. I had a really, really good experience. I'm now going to try and work out how I can get the PowerPoint back up. There we go. But I'm now actually in cybersecurity, and I'm going to pass on to Anna.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Anna, and I've been working in the Cybersecurity Operations Center, or the CSOC, doing the same work that actually Laura and Zara are now working on themselves. So I can talk a little bit about that in a second. But first, a little bit about me. So I actually always knew that I wanted to work in medicine or healthcare. And it was like right up until my A levels, I actually thought that I wanted to be a doctor. And I got as far as doing work experience in a hospital before I realized that actually being out on the front line really, really wasn't for me. So I did a big U-turn. I ended up studying maths at the University of Manchester. And then when it came up towards my graduation and I found out about the grad scheme at NHS Digital and that they wanted people with maths and techie backgrounds to work on projects that were going to have some sort of healthcare impact, I was super excited to get involved. Plus, as the other girls have said, not being 100% sure what I wanted to do with my career and getting that opportunity to like try out at one place for 6 months and then move on and figure out what suits you best was like super, super appealing. I also didn't start the grad scheme with a huge amount of coding experience. The maths degree that I was doing, I worked on like very small little coding projects, like one at a time. My favorite one of these was actually looking at the RSA encryption algorithm, which is kind of my first like little bit of interest in cyber and what sort of made me, when I started the scheme, express that interest, which got me put in cyber. But much more than coding experience, my degree was sort of focused on like the analytical skills and the technical skills, which then ended up being what I actually needed to be doing the work. So yes, onto the placement in cybersecurity. The CSOC at NHS Digital oversees cybersecurity for NHS Digital itself and across the whole of the NHS. So they're the central security hub, and they provide security services, guidance and incident management to NHS trusts and the wider NHS. Obviously, as everybody else has mentioned, the NHS has a lot of incredibly sensitive and important data that needs to be managed securely. And there's like not the opportunity for downtime, especially with services like Spine, where Maisie was. So everything has to be kept running smoothly. There's no opportunity for any interruptions. So this was a really, really exciting team to be part of, lots of crucial work going on. And I actually got a chance to work in 2 different teams while I was there that I can do a little bit of an overview about. So the first team that I was in was called Protective Monitoring. So they were monitoring real-time data from a variety of different sources across the NHS, looking for any indicators of suspicious behaviour. So the kind of data that we were looking at was network traffic from the firewalls that the NHS uses, endpoint activity from computers in GP surgeries and like those used by NHS staff. Also looking at the cloud service account usage and user account usage within NHS Digital itself. There was a lot of other things we were looking at, but I feel like that gives the general impression that it was super, super varied. And because this data we were looking at was like collected and looked at near real time, it was super, super fast paced work. And it required quite a lot of technical understanding and like analytical thinking to look at the data and figure out what was going on and figure out like how much this was concerning. If you looked at something and couldn't find a legitimate explanation for it with the data that you were looking at, there was a process of them reaching out to somebody else who could provide you more information. For example, out to the NHS Trust to ask them about what you were looking at. But if it actually went beyond this point, then it was escalated to the incident management team within the CSOC for them to handle. After I worked in protective monitoring, I moved on to work in the threat intelligence team, whose job it was to collect cyber information and then share this relevant information across the NHS. So the kind of things that we were looking at were new vulnerabilities being exploited, critical security updates for software or hardware that we knew the NHS were using, information about like emerging cyber threat groups or like new exploits that they were using. So it was very much like no 2 days are the same. Like the work that you were doing that day was determined by information that had happened overnight and information that had happened the morning of. So there was always plenty of work and it was always very, very varied. And then the information that we did compile was used in lots of different ways. So we worked with the threat hunting team, who were also part of the CSOC. So we'd collect information about the evidence that a particular exploit would leave behind, and they would take this and they would use it to proactively hunt across the NHS estate to see whether there was any sign that like that particular exploit had been attempted. We did intelligence briefings across the wider CSOC just to share like relevant information. We also have a public page on the NHS website that Zara showed called Cyber Alert. So all this information is available to the public, but the purpose of it is to share information with the wider NHS that we know is relevant. So the cyber teams out at NHS Trusts will be alerted when a new page is posted on this website so that they can action the information. So the ones we've got here, we've got information about a phishing campaign that was emerging so that people can be sure that they're like not falling for anything and they're keeping everything secure. And then we've got another alert about a new vulnerability that's being exploited that cyber leads would really have to be looking out for, and they'd have to be like monitoring when security updates were being pushed out so that they could apply them as soon as possible. So this was a super, super exciting team to work in, and they worked very, very collaboratively. So we'd have lots of big, long sessions having discussions about what it was we're looking at, what the implications of it might be for the NHS. Again, same as protective monitoring, this didn't actually require me to be doing any coding myself, but we were looking at a lot of heavily technical things, trying to figure out processes that attackers might use or how a particular vulnerability might be exploited, and to be able to assess how trivial that vulnerability was to exploit. So there's lots of heavily technical stuff, but not specifically coding. We were looking at a huge amount of information, as you can imagine, and a lot of it wasn't relevant to the NHS. So there was a lot of work doing in just sifting through it. But the daily tasks were always very, very varied, like monitoring different news channels, writing articles, compiling information on different threat actor groups, loads of different stuff going on. But yeah, being part of the CSOC was brilliant. I sort of started out with no experience in cyber whatsoever. As I said, I just did that one project and had that tiny little spark of interest. And it was just a really cool team. There's loads of people who've had these amazing career journeys who always had something interesting to tell me and interesting stuff to teach me. And I think Mia said it as well, just knowing that you're working in a team who have such a like interesting responsibility and like understanding what the implications of the work you're doing are is in itself super, super rewarding. It's also been really good fun. Myself, Zara and Laura actually attended a big cyber conference in Wales a few weeks ago with some of the other members from the CSOC, and we were actually able to meet some of the like cyber teams from like the wider NHS, so we could all have a chat about things that were going on and like learn what it's like from their perspective, the role. So there's been lots of really exciting training opportunities and networking and social elements of it as well. And that is actually all of us finished speaking. So I'm going to hand over to Abby now, who can round it all up, and then we can get ahead with the Q&A.
Yeah, so thank you for listening, everyone. Hopefully we've given you some insight into why healthcare needs coders and how we've been able to use and develop our own skills to benefit our teams and ultimately the wider NHS. As you will have heard, the coding work we do helps with the functioning of the NHS, from producing important data and statistics, ensuring services are always active and secure, and creating new systems and products to essentially give patients the best possible healthcare and save lives. So if you're interested, please check out the NHS Digital socials. If you want to know more about the grad scheme, you can ask any of us or email the address we have on the slide. Yeah, feel free to add any of us on LinkedIn and look out for some of us at the in-person hack down in London. So yeah, if there are any questions, we can answer them now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We've had a question actually already of how to apply. So I think I don't know if we have a link to that or not, but I can find one to put in the chat as well while we're kind of talking away. So keep any questions coming. I'll make sure that we do that. I think there's another one in the chat actually, but I was going to ask one, but you know what? People are more important than me, so I'll ask the one in the chat. So from Beth, someone said, do you have opportunities for career switchers / people later in their career without a comp sci background? I don't know who to aim these questions at, so I'll just fire them away. I don't know if
I'm
that's
happy
something
to answer this one. I think we mentioned super briefly, but the academy takes on apprentices, and a lot of those are degree apprentices. So we do actually have a few of those apprentices who are slightly older and have had whole careers in completely different fields, and they're then doing a degree alongside. I think it's 4 years, if I'm correct, and they'll work at NHS Digital as well as getting like a fully certificated degree alongside it. So yeah, there are lots of opportunities for people who haven't got computer science backgrounds or computer science degrees. Yeah.
Also, just in case you might be doing, like, you might have a different degree that isn't necessarily computer science, I do believe that like the academy still looks at other degrees, but people who have an interest in computer science. So don't let the fact that you don't have a computer science degree put you off from applying.
Sounds good. I think while we wait for a couple more questions to come through, I'll finally get mine in. If you do have any questions, by the way, remember you can still let us know in the chat. But I think a few of you kind of mentioned during the session around, mentioning impact on lives and the work that you're doing. I think sort of twofold. Was it something that any of you considered before applying? Like, was it something that kind of tempted you in the first place? And then is it something that now you're in it is like a motivating factor? So I know, it can probably be, quite a long slog sometimes. And is it something that like motivates you day to day, and kind of when you're doing projects and maybe struggling, that kind of impact that your work has on people's lives? Again, open question. Don't know who wants to go first. But just interested to know kind of how that dynamic works, I guess, between your first kind of expectations versus how it looks now.
Not to put you on the spot, Anna, but your motivation's not quite good for this. I feel like you should do your little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've already kind of covered it. Like it was definitely something that I always thought I wanted to be doing. And I fully abandoned the idea. I don't think I was aware that there were ways to be part of the NHS that weren't on the front line. So when I decided like I don't actually really want to study medicine, that was sort of it. I thought, maybe I'll go into statistics and maybe I'll end up in something like adjacent. I don't think I realized that I could actually still be working for the NHS, just doing something completely different. So it's definitely a motivating factor for me, but that's a pretty easy one. I don't know about you other guys.
I was going to say I didn't want to throw anyone under the bus, but Maisie just went for it, so I'm glad that it wasn't me that had to do it.
Yeah, I think as well, like the fact that when you're doing meaningful work, it's such a motivating factor because even when, you come across bugs and things that are a bit of blockers, just knowing like that the work you're doing is going to have an immediate impact, especially on people's health. And it can seem to be quite a dramatic thing to say, but it's really not. It's quite literal. It's definitely motivating. And even speaking to other people who work in hospitals and then the kind of describing the work we do, and they're like naming different providers and services they use, and it's like, yeah, like we work on that, like I know people who work on that, is something that's really affirming as well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
I think I can throw myself under the bus a bit as well. But just of like, also I think it has a real impact on the people that you work with, because everyone's kind of working like with that in mind. Like you're working with like people who like are incredibly talented, but like are also incredibly like passionate about what they do, and are like really keen to kind of like encourage other people to kind of be passionate about it too. So I think like as like a first kind of like office job, it's amazing to kind of like work with people who are like so willing to like help you learn and like progress, and like yeah, who like really genuinely care about the work they're doing. So not only is it like good personally, but just as like an environment to work in, it is very positive.
Yeah, I completely agree with Maisie. Everyone is so enthusiastic and it's incredible. It's quite scary sometimes because I'm like, oh, I need to match their enthusiasm. But it's quite well, for me anyways, it's sometimes easy to like forget what we're doing because we're not on the front line, like physically helping people out. But like when I went to get my vaccinations, I was like, I helped to keep this system up and running, which is crazy. And like when you do have those kind of moments of realizing what you are doing and like what you're helping with, it's amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think now, as much as any other time, like you say, with vaccinations and stuff like that, it must be, yeah, seeing all the like you said, everything from data as well to website and how that's all stored and kept is amazing. So, I don't know if there's any more questions at the minute. I think what I would just add to this as well from our perspective and a show code side of things is. As the team have mentioned, there are going to be some of them there competing at the weekend. So not to say that they're going to be a competition, but you can ask questions and stuff in the build up, but we'll have opportunities on Discord to ask stuff as well. I think I'm right in saying there are a few of you on the Athena Discord channel. So if there is anything for anyone watching it back or anyone that kind of thinks of any questions later on this afternoon, you can let us know. But a huge thank you to everyone for listening, and a massive thank you to you guys for joining this call, because I know that it's a lot of time and a lot of prep that goes into these kind of things. And I really appreciate everyone getting involved. It certainly makes Athena a much better event. So couldn't do it without you all.
Yeah, thank you very much.
you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions, let us know, and see you later, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.